Jasmine Reimer. I'm the state noxious weed coordinator, and I work for Montana Department of Agriculture. I'm just going to give a broad overview of the law just surrounding noncompliance and how, in a perfect world, how things could go. And then we're lucky enough to have 3 coordinators that have experience actually putting this law to work, and they'll talk about each of their unique experiences too. So starting off, the Montana Code annotated, that's what we're really talking about, is the County Weed Control Act. And so weed noncompliance and really the authority over management of noxious weeds sits at the county level in Montana. And so that's the County Weed Act we're talking about. The administrative rules of Montana that kind of go with this act are under 4.5, and that's the noxious weed management. And that includes like the noxious weed list and things that MDA kind of oversees. So it's kind of a hodgepodge of rules here. But we'll start with definitions, because that's really important to know the difference between a noxious weed or just an invasive weed, and then actually noxious. So our noxious weed is in law, as you can see here, it's an MCA. So it's any exotic plant species established or that could be introduced. And then that includes both statewide and county listed noxious weeds. So even if the state doesn't list a weed, the county has the ability to list their own noxious weeds as long as they're exotic, so non-native and invasive. When we talk about a person or a landowner or an owner, this is what we're really talking about. Number 9 here is any individual, partnership, corporation, association, state or local government agency, subdivision, and it's really anyone who's owning, occupying, or controlling land in Montana. And so that's what this law pertains to. And then weed management, of course, or the control, is the planning and implementation of a plan, of a weed management plan that works to contain, suppress, and then where possible, eradicate noxious weeds. So those are really the important definitions for this going forward. So some other rules, or sorry, laws that pertain to non-compliance. It's unlawful for any person to permit a noxious weed or to propagate or to let go to seed on their land. So that's pretty important. That's what this whole thing is about. It's unlawful for you to have noxious weeds on your land. And so it has the exception in there unless you've entered into a compliance with the weed district. Essentially, if you have a weed management plan on file and you're following that, then you can have somewhat noxious weeds. We all know that it's impossible just to eradicate them in 1 year, so they put that into place for that. This one, which I think a lot of people don't know about, number 2, is when property is offered for sale, the person who owns the property shall notify. So they have to notify the owner's agent and the purchaser if there are noxious weed infestations on the property and if they have a weed management plan on file. So that's interesting too. There's some, it's definitely happening in some places, maybe not so much in others. Funding, so even not just landowners, private landowners, but this even pertains to counties. So before they can even apply for state or federal funding, they have to have a weed management plan on file with MDA. And that plan has to be updated every 2 years. So it's not just, we're not just talking about private landowners. So this is how noncompliance works. If a complaint is made against the landowner, or if the board, and really what we're talking about, the board is the weed district board. So those definitions kind of go in and out. The weed district, the weed board, the weed coordinator, those are all, I'm all talking about the same thing there. Or if the board has reason to believe there's noxious weed present on the land, then they have to send a certified letter to that owner asking for permission to come on and do an inspection. So they have 10 days to reply to that letter. If within 10 days the board can't obtain an owner, they can determine who the owner is of the property, or the owner refuses to sign the certified letter, then they can go and get a court order to go in and inspect instead of voluntary. If they find noxious weeds on the property during that inspection, the weed board shall seek the landowner's voluntary compliance. So they're going to ask you, they're going to say, here's, these are the noxious weeds, here's how you can mitigate them and manage them, and let's get a weed management plan on file. And so that's voluntary compliance. If the weed board can't obtain that, then another certified letter goes out to that landowner. And so these are all the things that have to be listed in that second letter. And that really gives them another 10 days to reply to the second letter, notifying them that there's noxious weeds on their property. It tells them what they need to do. So they need to submit a weed management plan. And it also tells them, and they have the right to request a hearing to contest the findings. And also on the bottom, it also tells them what happens if they don't comply. So, and that can include extra costs, that 25% penalty. So how to comply, procedures for compliance. So landowners in compliance, if they submit a weed management plan to the county and it gets approved, and then they undertake those controls outlined in the plan. That's all it takes. You just have to have a plan to manage the weeds on your property, and have that approved by the weed district. And then you stay in compliance if that continues. If you're in non-compliance, so if the board can't obtain voluntary compliance after that second letter, then you're considered in non-compliance, that landowner is. So then again, the landowner can request a hearing before the commissioners if they don't agree. And if the commissioners make a ruling and they don't agree with that, then they can take it even higher and appeal to the district court. So as you can see, takes quite a bit of time. So then what happens, they can seek a court order. The weed district can seek a court order to enter upon the infested parcels. So they get the court order, and that allows either the weed district to go on and treat the noxious weeds on that property, or the weed district can hire a contractor, a commercial applicator, to go on and take care of those noxious weeds as well. And then once that's done, they submit a bill by certified mail, and it covers the cost of the weeds. It contains that extra penalty, so it can be up to 25% of the total cost on top of that. And then also includes labor, cost of materials like herbicides and things like that, equipment time, legal fees, court fees, all of those things. So that it maybe was a $500, $200, mitigation, but now because they had to take these steps, it's going to be a much higher bill for that landowner. The last thing I wanted to touch on, which is a little unique too, is of right-of-ways. So if a landowner has either a state or a county highway that borders or bisects their property, and they want to manage the weeds on that, they don't want the state or the county coming in and treating those weeds along that right-of-way, they can enter into agreement with the county. And so that agreement is, it just says the landowner is going to treat these weeds this way in this amount of time. It specifies all that, and then it's signed by the landowner, the weed board, and if it's state, then the DOT representative. Those agreements can be void if that landowner doesn't manage the weeds like they said they were going to. Responsibility of that goes back to the weed district, and they can face fines. It is a misdemeanor if they're not holding up their end of the agreement, the landowner. So that's just unique. That happens sometimes with organic farms. That's where we see that quite often. So that's a quick overview of just the weed law. Like I said, the next few presenters are going to really give you an idea of how it works on the ground. So these are the counties we're talking about. Beaverhead, we're going to have Amber go first, and then so they use this law, almost to the fullest. And then Gallatin County is very unique. They have, you know, growing cities, lots of landowners, and then Golden Valley and Musselshell, merge them together with Meriel. So dealing with two sets of commissioners, two different attorneys, weed boards, things like that. So that's her unique perspective. And so I will hand it over to Amber.
Okay, can everybody hear me? Jasmine, can you hear me?
Yep, can hear you.
Okay, that's like the worst feeling of not knowing if everybody can hear us. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So Beaverhead County, like Jasmine and Jane have said, it's down here in the southwest corner of Montana. Dillon is our county seat. A little bit of history. So I've been with the weed district since 2001. I went back through some files just to see how many we had done and kind of what those results had been. So from 2006 to 2009, we sent out 39 notices, starting with that first letter. 31 of those ended up in voluntary compliance. 8 did result in non-compliance, where we actually went on to the property and did management and sent those folks an invoice. We had one in 2009 that actually went all the way to court, went up to our district court. That individual, we had got to the point in the process that we were pulling up to do management on the property, and she met us at the gate with her finger shaking, saying, "You're not coming on." And so it did end up going to court. Beaverhead County was successful in that court case. We did go on and treat, and like Jasmine had mentioned, it went from, you know, what could have been a fairly small invoice to a substantial treatment there. Let's see, from 2011 to 2017, I couldn't find the folder for 2010 for some reason. We sent out 148 notices. That seems like a lot. We ended up having kind of some folks in our one part of the county that they put 70 some of their neighbors. They filed complaints, official formal complaints on 70 some of their neighbors. So out of those 148, all of them ended up in voluntary compliance. And then from 2018 to 2020, we've sent out 17 notices, 15 of which have been voluntary compliance, and 2, which are actually the same landowner, have ended in non-compliance, where we actually still have active non-compliance on those folks. So I have the picture here of the Union Pacific Railroad train. That is who our 2 non-compliance is with. We have 2 separate ones. One is having to do with a site, a location where Dyer's Wood, a priority 1A species in the state. So it's the highest priority. We have that one separated out because of its significance and importance to the county and to the state. And then that was the first one we did, I think, in 2018. And then in 2019, we still couldn't come to an agreement with Union Pacific. And so we did put the full length of the railroad for all noxious weeds in non-compliance. I actually went to a meeting in Idaho. There was 5 states at that meeting, and Union Pacific, the gal that was there for them, pretty well told us that for us to do weed management, or for Union Pacific to do weed management within the right-of-way beyond that ballast, that the non-compliance process was kind of our only option. So in a way, it's been a cordial thing, but it's definitely caused a few gray hairs. Jasmine, you can go ahead. So a few highlights, complaints. So a lot of people want to come in and make a complaint but they don't want to put their name on it. And that really can be a sticky situation. So we've done that in the past where we've allowed that. I've really moved over in the last couple of years that if you want to make a complaint, then you need to be signing your name to it as a landowner so that you know, it's all formal. But we do also those county complaints, those would be the board, the board thinking or knowing that there's weeds in that area or having reason to believe that there's weeds in those areas. That gives us the ability when we're out, if we see a problem area across the fence, if it's across the fence and just getting bigger and bigger, and we're trying to work on the right of way or on some of our other partnerships, it makes it very difficult to see those results that we need to see without getting those folks on board. So we do those kind of non-compliance actions as well, or letters. Another highlight would be the researching the ownership. So we've kind of found that, you know, a lot of times these landowners, out-of-state landowners, they have a representative in the state, somebody that's local that you can talk to. Or, you know, when we're researching that ownership, if the cadastral hasn't been updated, it's possible that that land has changed ownership. And so it's good to do your homework ahead of time. And we've started the last couple of years, if we have a relationship with some folks, we'll try to make those phone calls first. And a lot of times, you know, they may not realize that they have a problem. And so then we don't even really have to go through the whole non-compliance process. So the friendly letter, I have friendly in quotations, because when somebody gets a certified letter, no matter what's in that certified letter, they're not going to perceive it as friendly to begin with. So very likely that phone call that we get to begin with, they're not going to be happy. And so we try to just really make sure that we're as friendly as we can be when we're visiting with those folks, letting them know that we're asking to go out and look and help them identify. We're offering our assistance to, you know, help them prepare that management plan and make those goals that work for them. And then we also provide them a template to complete a weed management plan, so they don't feel like they're starting from scratch. You can go ahead, Jasmine. So board action, like Jasmine was saying, within the law, you know, as county coordinators, it's tempting to just send everything and sign it, but it's really important to have the board involved. The board needs to know what's going on. The board needs to be making those decisions, and it needs to be coming from them. They're the ones that are going to approve the management plan, and then they're also going to authorize that non-compliance notice. But it's also very important for the board to be consistent across the board of, okay, you know, maybe this board member is neighbors with the person that's been, or the landowner that's had the complaint filed on him. We can't take that into account. It's got to be the same across the board. County attorney and commissioner support. I can't stress enough keeping your county attorney and your commissioners in the loop. Sitting down and having a conversation with them in their office can go a long way. And as far as the county attorney, the way we've worked it in Beaverhead County, he's super busy. He wants me to just let him know, you know, these are the ones that we're sending. This is kind of where they're progressing, for him to stay in the loop. And then we also record all of the letters, even the first friendly letter, with the clerk and recorder's office, so it's on file there if we ever need to retrieve it. Challenges. So over the years, some of the things that I've seen as challenges, and I'm sure you'll hear this from Meriel and Michael too, is when the complaint really isn't about weeds. You know, it may be that they're fighting over water, or they just don't like each other. And so they're looking for any little thing that they can to complain about. So when we get those complaints, it's really, you've got to take the complaint needs to be about weeds, and stress that we can't do anything about the trash going in the creek. We can't do anything about, your neighbor shutting the water down. Those are not the topics that we have control over at the weed district. So that can be a little bit of a tricky discussion, but just being friendly and getting down to the root of some of these things is very helpful. Absentee landowners, they can always be a challenge. We have folks here in Beaverhead County that they own a parcel of land and they've never been here, they've never seen it. It's just they want to own a little piece of Montana. So those ones are a little bit tricky. The time it takes during our busy season, it's not a 5-minute process. You've got to take the time to make sure all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, and then you're having those conversations and you're available to do those site visits. So that can get a little bit overwhelming if we get a lot of complaints. And then there's also that potential for budget implications. If as some of these smaller weed districts that don't have large budgets, if you end up sending those non-compliance notices and you've got to get into that treatment, it could be 3 years before that bill is paid if it's attached to taxes. And so your budget needs to be able to handle that, and you need to be prepared for that. One thing that Beaverhead County commissioners did several years ago, it was probably 10, 15 years ago, they actually set up an account that was just for non-compliance. And at that time, if we did non-compliance work and we paid invoices out of that account, then when those taxes were paid or those bills came in, payment came in, it went back into that account. So that's just a thought of a possible way to at least mitigate that potential budget implication. Go ahead, Jasmine. So a few takeaways. Most times voluntary compliance is possible. I've found that that person might be madder than a hornet when they call you, but just talking through it, letting them know, and being a resource to them. We actually have found quite a few weed district advocates because of that. Actually, the chairman of our weed board, he was put in non-compliance years ago, and now he's our chairman, and he's very involved and very much cares about weeds. So again, I can't stress enough keeping your commissioners, weed board, and county attorney and your staff in the loop, because you as a coordinator might not be the one in the office when that mad landowner calls in. And so if your staff kind of has an idea of what's going on, then they can help field that call a little bit. Keeping good records of dates and conversations, that's very important. We try to organize things to where we have that record and we have all those letters together, and then jotting down what was the decision made. Email can be a great thing to follow up after you have that initial visit. Send them an email that this is what we talked about, and then it's recorded in an email. Again, be consistent, but be firm and assertive when you need to be, but always be kind. That's all I have.
I'm going to interrupt here for a minute. This is Jane. We have a couple poll questions I think we want to run before we move on to Mike. Does that sound okay, Amber and Jasmine? I'm going to go ahead and open up the first poll. So attendees, go ahead and take a look at that and put your answer down. Just give you about 15 more seconds. I think the results of this poll are really going to give us some insight into the psychology of our attendees. Here, let's go and let's see what the results. Can you guys see the results? Looks like most people say talk to them and offer help and assistance. Okay, I'm going to pull up the second poll concerning Beaverhead County. And Jasmine and Amber, if you want to respond to these polls at all when we close them and share the results, please feel free to do that. We'll give it about 10 more seconds. Can you guys see the results okay? It looks a little different on my screen. Looks like most people said true, which I would agree with that. Would you agree, Amber?
I would.
All right. Okay. And while we're taking a little break, let's do the midway check-in. So for those of you wishing to get the applicator credit, once again, please put your name and license number in the chat box. And then while you're doing that, we'll turn it over to the next speaker.
Okay, so am I up?
Yep, we can hear you, Mike.
Okay, good. So yeah, I'm Mike Jones. I'm with Gallatin County, and for my videos, maybe you can see me. And I'm just here to give the Gallatin County perspective on non-compliance. And of course, we've been experiencing explosive growth in Gallatin County, so we've kind of revamped our non-compliance policy over the last few years, and really want to echo what Amber had to say about working with your commissioners, your attorney, your weed board. That's all absolutely critical if you want to get that done. On the slide, I've kind of listed some of the changes that we've made, and I'll kind of go through those kind of quickly here. Number one is the county does not make complaints. And we've kind of settled on the issue that that's kind of an issue of fairness, and I'll kind of go into that in a little bit here. We do make people that are wanting to make a complaint have a signed written complaint form. And we used to have a lot of people that would literally, we would show up to work and have 5 complaint forms slid under the door. We had no idea who they were from and no accountability, nobody to talk back to. So we've made them actually put their name on the dotted line for that. The other thing that we're starting to require now is a consultation with us. You've got to get in touch with us either in person or by phone, or we'll even meet with you at the site. It doesn't really matter to us. But we need to get all the facts in the case straight from you, from the person making the complaint. And we also want to explain, because we've had a lot of misconceptions about how non-compliance works. We want to explain that they are undertaking a legal action, and they need to know everything that goes with that. They could potentially, if this case goes to court, they could be hauled witness, maybe even a defendant, depending on how it goes. We want them to know that the complaint form that they just filed is a public record. For person getting complained against wants to see it, they can. We also want them to know that the process is very slow. And what we found out that this consultation has really helped cut down on, a lot of the things that Amber touched on, the complaints that really aren't about weeds and other things. The other thing we offer people that want to do the file a complaint is an education. And after that initial consultation with the person, frequently what we hear is, well, I don't want to get them in trouble, or I don't want it to go to that level. And we say, okay, we can send them some educational information and try to get it resolved. And that's actually worked pretty well. So the other thing that our attorney has actually allowed us to do is court orders are good for 3 years. And so in those instances where we do get the court order and we do have to go treat a piece of property, we were able to treat those areas for 3 consecutive years with no further paperwork. That has really sped up the process a lot. It does have some downsides that I can go to in a second too. Bottom line from our county attorney is that each action that we take must be defensible in court, because Bozeman has a lot of growth and a lot of those people are fairly wealthy. And it will just be a matter of time before we are sued over one of these actions. So like Amber said, I's dotted, T's crossed. And our overall goal of this whole thing, if we're going to go through this whole process, we want there to be effective weed treatment. And the best way to achieve that really is to have the landowner take responsibility and start treating weeds themselves. And we have found that the educational approach really goes a lot further in achieving that goal than showing up on somebody's property with a court order and a spray truck. So, but at least if we do have to enforce, we can at least get 3 years of control. So, okay, Jasmine, next slide. Okay, so anybody doing non-compliance will have a bunch of challenges to go with it. And far and away, Gallatin County's is growth, population growth. Since the 2010 census, our population has grown by 25%. The number of private parcels has also expanded incredibly too. And just an example of that, in 2019 alone, we had applications for 48 new subdivisions. Will create 900 new private lots. Half of those private lots that are going to be created are more than 2 acres. So we're going to have a whole bunch of new landowners that are buying lots that are several acres in size. Many of those new landowners will have no knowledge of noxious weeds. We have a lot of education to do. The next challenge we have is an issue of fairness. So we got thinking about this, and I got wondering, well, how many distinct parcels are there in Gallatin County? Well, it turns out the Bozeman Chronicle actually did an article on that in 2015, and the number they came up with was 46,000. Well, of the subdivisions we've had since 2015, we're well over 50,000 private parcels in the county right now. Like I mentioned, many of them multi-acre lots. And almost all of them have weeds of some form. So to be really fair, we would have to file hundreds or even thousands of complaints a year. And in fact, that is one of the things that we get comments on from landowners that have complaints brought against them. Is one of the first things they ask is, well, my neighbor down the street has weeds. Can I file a complaint on them too? So of course the question there has to be yes. And then you're into a really downward spiral. So education, I think, is really important for us to. The next challenge, of course, like Amber touched on, the process is slow. We just can't pick up the phone and call our county attorney we have to send an email to the county administrator, then sends an email to the county attorney, who then gets back in touch with us on when she can take the case. So far, that hasn't been too bad. That's usually a matter of just a few days. But from the time we get our initial complaint to the time, so that's something we have to take into account for everything that we do. And as Amber also alluded to, the administrative time during your field season can be quite significant for each and every complaint. Each complaint that we prepare, even to the first notice status, takes several hours. By the time you drive out to a site, which a close site might be 30 minutes from the office, 30 minutes back, you've got an hour drive time already, plus your inspection time. And you've got to prepare your notices, develop your cost estimates, download your photos, your GPS data, make maps. Then you've got to go stand in line at the post office to get your certified letter out. On top of that, wants us to send not only certified letters, but regular letters too. Plus, we keep a hard copy for our file, and then the attorney wants a hard copy for their file. So for each and every notice we send to the landowner or the registered agent or anybody else that might be involved, we have to have 4 hard copies. So it just takes quite a bit of time to put one of those things together. The other issue that we're starting to run into a little bit, and I'm kind of concerned this is going to take off more and more, is some of our more wealthy landowners are pretty much ignoring any notice that we send them because, frankly, the legal fees, the treatment cost, even the 25% penalty are insignificant. So they just let us go and do it, and that technically puts them in compliance, and we get all the paperwork and all the liability. So that's something that we're really having to wrestle with right now, and we're just trying to figure that out. So we don't have a lot of that going on, but it's something that we're concerned about. The end result, I'd say, that is probably one of the biggest challenges is that landowners that get non-compliance are resentful. There's no buy-in. And what we have found over the years is they do the mandated weed control, or we do it for them, and they don't do anything in the future. And then their neighbor files another complaint on them again, 2 or 3 years down the road, and it just becomes a revolving door. So that's a big issue too. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide, Amber. Or sorry, Jasmine. All that being said, we have had some successes. I regard that we were able to work successfully with our commissioners and weed board and our attorney, who have been really good to work with, and getting the policy changed as a pretty major success right there. And of course, COVID has changed how everybody does business. But in an unexpected way, I would say that it has really bolstered our education message a lot. Our weed board allowed us to do a total educational informational approach during 2020 because it's just not safe to meet in person, and not everybody in Gallatin County is wealthy, and some are taking a big hit right now economically. So we sent out a number of friendly letters to people in response to the complaints, and I got to say that the people making the complaints were pretty okay with that. And we've noticed that a good number of those folks that we contacted, a lot of them had no idea that their noxious weeds were even an issue, and once they found out, they took some form of action. That could have been mowing, have their places treated. So using that approach, we have a much better chance at getting that buy-in. People will actually be responsible and take care of their own property, which is really what we want in the end anyway. So And the last thing I'll mention with another proactive type approach is Ventonata. Ventonata got listed, and we were proponents of that because of the impacts that this plant can have. But we got concerned because we knew of 25 or 30 landowners that had Ventonata, and we all know that Ventonata is really expensive to treat. And if we had to go out and treat several parcels that range from 25 to 50 acres of Ventonata, that might impact our budget. So we designed a brochure that kind of combined a need ID, why should you care, be a good neighbor, don't let it spread type messaging. We sent it out to those 25 or 30 people that we knew had Ventonata and all their neighbors. In total, we sent out 100 plus brochures. We know of 11 that called us back and said that yes, they had their Ventonata treated. And some of those folks were some of the ones that had 40 or 50 acres of Ventonata, and they reported that they spent $4,000 to $5,000 having it treated. So I count that as a huge success. If people are willing to put out that kind of money, just because they got a brochure in the mail and got some information from us, that I think that's really a positive. We did hear anecdotally from applicators and other neighbors and stuff that more people did get their Ventonata treated, but we can't confirm it. We're anticipating trying this for different species in the future, maybe with some common weeds like knapweed, with some new invaders like orange hawkweed. So stay tuned on that. And I'll leave you with the fact that we got our first complaint in 2021, about a week ago, when it was -20 and there was a foot of snow on the ground. It's a subdivision in Bozeman, one patch of weeds, we're not sure what, 'cause it's under snow, that is on 6 different landowners' pieces of property. So we're off to a running start. With that, I will pass the baton on to Muriel.
Okay, and while they do that, I'm going to pull up Mike's poll question. I am pulling it up. All right, here it is. All right, going to close it and share the results. I think people did pretty well. I would agree with the true answer. Is that right, Mike?
That's right. Yep, true.
All right. Okie dokie. I think you're up, Meriel.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Well, I don't know if I can get my video to work. We'll see here. So I'm weed coordinator for 2 counties, Musselshell-Golden Valley. The reason that was, population for both counties to combined is not even 5,500 people. So the budgets are really low, the tax base is really low. So the only way these 2 counties could get a weed coordinator was to combine. So that's how I ended up being a weed coordinator for 2 counties. Our non-compliance is based off of the weed board. Weed board drives everything that we do, or everything that I do. So with that being said, the weed board didn't want the weed coordinator to be the weed police. So instead, they asked us to set up a friendly letter first. The first letter that goes out, there's no formal notice. It's just a typed letter stating what was found on their property, how to take care of it, how the weed district can help, what things we can offer them. That has worked pretty good for us. I would say 85% of the letters that are sent out there, I get a response from. If I get a person that comes in wanting to do a complaint, they have to come into the office. We have been put in the position and the situation of neighbors fighting against other, like the others have said. So they have to come into the office to fill out that complaint. Before they can fill out that complaint, though, the weed board and weed coordinator have decided that they need to fill out a weed plan of their own. So before they can fill out that weed complaint, they have to fill out a weed plan. And it's really interesting to see it weeds out those bad neighbor feud kind of things, because if they don't want the time to fill out a weed plan, then they're not really committed to having these weeds taken. It's more of bad neighbor kind of situation. So once they come in, they fill out that weed plan. Then what I do is I go out to the property to do a site visit. That site visit, I go and look at their property, and then I can also visually see that their neighbors have an issue. When that site is done, then they fill out the complaint work, and then the first letter sent. We send out, it's just a nice letter stating, hey, we've found that you had some issues with noxious weeds on your property. Again, telling them how we can help, giving them information on how to take care of the weeds. The other thing that we put with that letter is contractors list. So if they can't physically do it themselves, then they can hire somebody to do that. If that doesn't work, if that friendly letter doesn't work, then we will send out an official non-compliance letter to them. Weed board didn't want the first one registered. The second one we do register. If they don't respond at that time, then my hands are tied. And I'll tell you why. Our county attorney, and of course we have the same county attorney for both counties. He has stated to the weed boards, he has stated to the commissioners that he will not allow a county employee to go onto private property, without the landowner's permission. So if you don't have the support of your county attorney, then you're pretty much done. It's frustrating because we can't take it any farther. It's also frustrating that my return offenders, as I call them, for weed control, do not, they know this, they know that the county attorney isn't behind us, so they kind of blow us off. So that kind of hurts me there. But, you know, that's all we can do. So with that being said, that's our biggest frustration, is not having the support of the county attorney. I do have fantastic weed boards. They are very supportive. I have very fantastic commissioners. They are behind me too. In fact, we ended up with one of the non-compliance letters that we sent out. He went to the county commissioners and said that I was full of BS, and they backed me up. And so did the weed board. So that's really nice there. But it is really hard when you don't have the county attorney able or even willing to do anything for you. But with that being said, the people that we have gone and sent out that first letter, I would say 50% of those guys are my weed warriors for the county. They're the first ones that come into the office the start of the season. Hey, I need my sprayer. I need some chemical. They're the first ones to get on it. If they're the first ones to do a lot of education to their neighbors too. They'll actually say, hey, you know what? Go talk to Meriel. She'll get you hooked up. She'll get you taken care of. She'll help you. So that is a big plus. That's why we continue to do non-compliance, even though our county attorney doesn't help us any much with that. The other thing that we do, if if I put out a compliance or a non-compliance letter and they come in, and every year I have a situation with 2 or 3 people that come in that have had non-compliance done, and they cannot, number one, physically do it or financially be able to do it. So the weed board has decided that that's where we take our cost share dollars, and we will go out and actually help these people get control of the noxious weeds as the weed district, just to get them started so that it's more manageable for them. Other than that, like I say, it is frustrating that I don't have the county attorney's backing, but yet we're still able to do non-compliance to a certain point, and we are making a difference. It would just be really nice to be able to do more. But when you're one person in 2 counties and you don't have any office staff, we do the best that we can do. But I encourage anyone to start a non-compliance program, because you're going to get more positive out of that than negative. That's been my take on that. And that's about all I have.
Okay, thanks, Meriel. We have a poll question from Meriel. We'll go ahead and pull that up. Give people 30 seconds or so to answer that. Okay, I'm going to close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we'll share those results. Meriel, it looks like most people said true. Is that the correct answer?
Yes, it is.
All right. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead. We have a few minutes left here. I want to say thank you to all our presenters today. It's really interesting information, and thank you for sharing your experiences. We do have a few questions waiting. I think this is probably a question for Jasmine. When is the last time that the County Noxious Weed Control Act was updated?
So it really depends on the section. They're kind of off and on, but quite a few of them got updated in 2011. There was another chunk in 2013, and then a few in 15. But I don't believe since then nothing's been changed.
Okay. Here's another question for you. What do you say when a landowner calls the Department of Ag and says their county doesn't engage in non-compliance, and kind of what can be done? Do you get questions like that, and what would your response be?
Yes, I get several of those, especially when spotted knapweed is blooming. That seems to be the one that everyone knows and everyone sees because it's in a lot of places and it's purple. So yeah, we do get that. And I really just try to talk to them. I listen to their situation and really try to get a sense of what is going on, where they're at, how long it's been a problem. And I ask them about what they've done to talk to the county. And really, if they've kind of exhausted the county weed, the coordinator, I really encourage them to talk to their commissioners and get a place on their next commissioner meeting and talk to them about that, or meet them somewhere, in the coffee shop or wherever they see them. And that's their best place, because they have to get those commissioners and the county attorney on board. There's really not much that we can do from the state.
Okay. Thank you very much. We have a couple more questions, but I also know we're getting close on time here. I'm going to remind people as we're wrapping up here, if you would like the pesticide applicator credit, please go ahead and enter your name and license number in the chat box now. And I'll remind people that next week we have Dr. Kent McVeigh talking about cropping systems as a tool for weed management. Please go ahead and complete the survey when we're done today. You'll get a little pop-up window when you sign out here. And then I'm going to ask one more question that I am really intrigued about as people kind of finish signing up or signing in and logging off. I'm going to ask each one of you in like 10 or 15 seconds to answer this question. If you could, at the snap of your fingers, change one thing about the County Noxious Weed Control Act, what would it be? We'll start with Jasmine.
A fund to pay for it for those counties that can't take the burden.
Okay, Amber.
Well, I'm not real good about being put on the spot, but I would probably agree with Jasmine, just that burden of taking how to fund it, both people in the office to do it, and then that liability.
Okay, thank you, Amber. Mike, what about you?
You know, I guess I would have to agree with all that too, because really non-compliance could be a full-time job for 2 or 3 people in Gallatin County if you went after everybody.
All right, Mike. And Meriel, you're the lucky one because you got like 30, 40 seconds to think of your answer. What would you say?
You know, I'm going to opt out and do what Amber and I'm going to go with it would be nice to have more funds, because when you have 2 counties that are so limited on funds, having another person in to do non-compliance would be awesome. We could actually get something more done.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for letting me put you on the spot there with that rapid fire question. And thanks again for joining us today. Our presenters for sharing your experience, and our attendees, thanks for your attention, and hopefully you learned a few things that you got some useful nuggets you can take home with you today too. Thanks a lot.
for having us, Shane.
Thank you.
Thanks.